Hey everybody, it is me, and it is during the daytime, which is unusual. Today, wanted to talk a little bit about ghost videos, or ghost photos anyway, and making a ghost video, or at least a ghost photo video. I'm going to make a couple of these, hopefully, about different ways that ghost photos can be faked, or just wrong. The first one I'm going to start talking about is camera quirks. Things that you can do with your camera to make a ghost photo. And then I'll show you something that I've done with my camera to make a ghost photo of myself. So first of all, okay, wanted to introduce you to one of the oldest ghost photos ever. This is a purported ghost photo of a fellow named Lord Combermere. Combermere Abbey is the place where this was taken. It's taken in the latter part of the 19th century, 18 something or other, and it is taken by a woman named Sybil Corbett. Of course, that's the story. Anyway, this is the story. And Lord Combermere, his name is actually Lord Henry Stapleton Cotton. He was the I guess, Lord of Combermere Abbey, Combermere Manor, I suppose, at that time. At the time that the photo was taken, according to the story, he has recently passed away. He was in an accident. He was in his 70s anyway, and he was in an accident. He'd fallen off of whatever method of conveyance he was using, and had bumped his head. He developed pneumonia and other problems from the accident and his advanced age, and he passed away. And this person sitting in the chair is purported to be Lord Combermere, and that is of the story. Here is more of the story. Now, I get all this from About.com's ghost photo editor, who calls these the best or greatest ghost photos ever taken. And so this is where all of this comes from. Lesson 1, you can't really rely on these stories. You've played telephone in the classroom. Not only have these stories gone from person to person to person to person, they've also gone through, this particular story has also gone through potentially 100 years of story. So we don't know if any of this stuff is true. If she wrote it down at the time, then it's still her version of events that may or may not be true. We do know from the story itself that this is a 1-hour exposure. This is really the whole explanation for this photo, is that it's a 1-hour exposure. Sure, they say nobody was at the house at the time because everybody was at the funeral. Well, apparently somebody was at the house at the time, because that's what this is. All right, let's just take a look at the photo again. Bang. Okay, so here is, you see a semi-transparent person sitting in a chair. Look at the windows. You see how bright the light is coming in those windows? It'd have to be an incredibly bright day, but not really. It actually wouldn't have to be that bright of a day at all, because the 1-hour long exposure would allow for more light, for the film to be exposed with more light. What happens, and you can find this with any camera today, even digital ones, if you expose the recording media to light, it becomes whiter. Whiter and whiter and whiter and whiter and whiter until it just becomes pure white and nothing else can be recorded there. That's how photography works. You don't expose it with a little light, it gets a little white. If you expose it with a lot of light, it gets a lot white. So that's why black and white photography works, because it's of what's being reflected onto the level of light that is being reflected onto the recording media. And so that's why all the light's coming in the windows, is because there was so much light from those windows being recorded on that 1-hour exposure, which means that the lens of the camera was open for an entire hour. Normally the lens on a camera is open for a fraction of a second to capture that amount of light that's there at that moment. If this is open for a whole hour, you're going to get a lot of light pollution on there, and that's what's happened here. Okay, if it's open for an hour, then what do you suppose would happen if somebody came in during that hour and sat down in that chair for, say, 5, even 10 minutes? Let's look. Here's an image of myself. It's an image of myself a couple of years ago, sitting in a chair. This exposure was a 50-second exposure, slightly less than a minute, and I sat in the chair for the entire 50 seconds. Here's the next photo. This photo is the same time and same chair and same me. This time I'm sitting in the chair for 40 of the 50 seconds. At the end of 40 seconds, I jumped out of the chair and stood off to the side. Notice some transparency there. It gets better. Here's a third photo. This photo is of me in the chair again, and I stayed in the chair this time for 30 seconds before I jumped out, leaving the camera to capture the back of the chair for the rest of the 20 seconds. So you see a little bit more transparency. Here's the third photo, or actually I believe this is the fourth one already, where I have been sitting in the chair for 20 seconds, and then I jumped out. Another photo where I've sat in the chair, this time for 10 seconds of the 50 seconds before I jumped out. And this is what you see. Transparency is very easy with an extended exposure. Anybody can do this. You can set not any camera, but you can set many cameras to. I have a digital SLR. If it's an SLR camera, it's a camera that you have a lot of control over, and you can set it to record for a longer period of time. And that's exactly what I did here. And that's exactly what Sybil Corbett did in 1880 something when she was taking this photo. And then somebody came and sat down in that chair for a period of time during that photo. And that's the explanation to it. That is the explanation of this photo. Then that's the explanation of these other photos. This is a photograph that I've seen around, also on the same website at about.com, which purports to show two girls posing with a ghost. In this image, you can tell, if you look at the lights in the background, that it's an extended exposure photo because they're they're blown out, is what we call it. The lights are blown out, which means that the light was shining on the recording medium for an extended period of time. That also explains why the person in the photo looks like they do. Here's another picture of myself. I sat in the chair here, and over the 50-second exposure, I placed my hands in various positions on my body. It looks very similar to the image that you see there, simply what happens when somebody moves while somebody is making an extended exposure. What I imagine the person did here in this photo is that held onto the woman with one hand, and then stayed for a second, and then while still holding on to the person with the hand, that's why the arm is solid, moved out of the frame of the photo. So the purpose, it looks to me like the image was purposefully made to be, it's a fraud. It's a fraudulent photo. So that's that. Here's a picture of me also, just to help prove this point. This is me sitting in the chair for the 50 seconds, and in the entire 50 seconds I just shook my head back and forth. And this is what that looks like when you've done it. You could say that I look like a freak monster, but in reality it's just that the image didn't have a chance to tackle or to place, or sorry, the camera didn't have any chance to place the any specific detail on my face on the film or on the recording medium. Here's another one. This image is of a priest walking into a church. You see here the same kind of, or actually not walking into a church, but basically walking under some kind of arch. You see the same kind of blurriness here. Again, extended exposure photo. You see the light in the photo is very bright, very it's interior, so it's dark in the photo, which would necessitate that you have a longer exposure in order to collect enough light be able to even have a photo. So that's what's happening here. You see the light in the background is very blown out. The sundial in the back there is also that sundial, whatever icon in the back there is very blown out. And so this is probably a less than 20-second exposure, probably, maybe even a 10-second exposure, at which point there is a person standing or walking around the corner, and they're either moving back and forth or they're just simply going through the course of walking, and during that time the image wasn't able to put itself on the camera in any detail. Here's a really famous one. This is the first ghost photo that I ever saw. It's the hooded monk standing in front of what appears to be an altar. The reason that people say, now this one is somewhat more difficult, and I'm not certain about how this was done. The only thing I know is that it's definitely a fake. If you assume that transparency means that it's a ghost, then I've already disproven that you can do that through any number of means. This is a person standing there. They could have stood there for a period of time during an extended exposure, which again, this looks like it is if you look at the windows in the background. And this is inside of what may be a dark church, which would again necessitate a longer exposure time in order to pick up the details that it picks up. If he stood there, if it was a 20-second exposure, if he stood there for 10 seconds and then popped out, this is what you'd see. Here's another one. These are all purported to be the best photos, blah, 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 blah. This is a photo of a desk upon which you see a hand. Same thing. The person held their hand, probably dressed in something dark, held their hand there for a period of time, and then while the exposure was going on, and then removed their hand from the image, causing a transparency effect. The dark clothing matched into the dark of the desk, and that is that. And finally, it's another one of the more famous ghost photos. Definitely a photo where it's an extended exposure. You can tell by the light in the background there. There's a light against the wall toward the top center of the picture, which is completely blown out. A person could very easily have just hung on the stair and then pulled themselves out of the picture, or hung on the stair, which looks like they may have done, and then just moved their head around like I did in that photo there, which would cause a blurring effect. And there's their ghost photo. So that's how those were probably done. If that's not how they were done, that's certainly a logical explanation for them. That is my discussion of the potential for what cameras will do to help you make a ghost photo. And that is how I figure those are probably made. I'm going to do another couple of videos about other ways to fake ghost photos. So that will be coming up over the next couple of weeks. I'll get better at making them. This one's kind of first attempt sort of deal. It would be really cool if I could actually make my own ghost photos that were exactly the same as these, and I may actually do that and replace this video, because that's kind of fun. But let me know what you think. If you think that I'm wrong in this, tell me why, use logical arguments, all that good stuff. I'd love to have a conversation about this. So that's it. That's it from the video. It was great showing you. It was great working on it. So let me know what you think. We'll talk to you later. Bye.